Hi. Um, hmm. This is my Assure model lesson plan for the Copyright in the Digital World lesson. Analyzing learners. A. General characteristics. Mrs. Stewart's students are mostly of Hispanic and Asian descent. They are somewhat motivated as pre-AP students in a sophomore language arts class. Mrs. Stewart and I, through a pre-assessment, have concluded that the students have heard the term copyright, but confuse it regularly with plagiarism, the act of taking or using someone else's work without permission and/or presenting it as your own. Likewise, through a verbal and visual survey, students communicate their comfort level with applications such as YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter on a scale of 0 to 5. 0, no use. 1, viewing and responding through writing. 2, image posting. 3, image repost and response. 4, the ability to alter images. 5, the ability to create mashups with images, sounds, and videos. As stated, the students' entry competencies with copyright knowledge are the ability to navigate the internet, use web-based applications to interact socially, a rudimentary understanding of academic plagiarism. From the verbal and visual survey of web-based apps, Mrs. Stewart and I discovered that the majority of students read and interacted with YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter on a surface level. Thus, they were more likely to repost another person's work rather than be a creator. Therefore, we have decided to expand their technological expertise by including Mrs. Townsend, the technology instructor, in our lesson. She will assist the students in designing and creating products using Photoshop, Adobe Spark, and other technology applications to fulfill the creation portion of the deliverable final student product. Because these students are primarily motivated by web-based applications such as YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram, I will be discussing the brief history of copyright as it applies to music and the creation of memes, parodies, and mashups. Students have a 10-minute attention spans, therefore the lesson will integrate opportunities for turn and talk discussions about current copyright issues such as Taylor Swift's master copy disagreement with her former record label. Although the slide deck has videos from Crash Course and ABC News, those will not be used in the actual lecture, but will be available as talking points for student engagement. These videos provide opportunities for visual and spatial learners and interpersonal students to interact and digest the information on copyright. Students will be provided the choice of whether to work in groups of 3 or individually according to their preferences, as communicated by Mrs. Stewart. They will also, with Mrs. Townsend, be coached and guided to work with software creation of their choice. State standards and objectives. The S. The state standards supporting this lesson are as follows. CCSS. Students locate and analyze information to develop valid, relevant, and well-supported arguments. Students meaningfully use media to create visual art that communicated the intended message. ITSE. Students are creative and innovative in technology use. Students effectively communicate and use technology collaboratively. Students use technology for critical thinking, problem solving, and decision making. Students skillfully use technology resources. The learning intention objective is written from the student's sophomore language arts point of view in accordance with the visible learning initiatives to make students responsible for understanding, learning, and monitoring their own individual and team progress. Learning intention. 1A. I will be able to understand the basic definition and purpose of copyright through listening to a presentation by the librarian. Success criteria. 1A. I know I understand copyright and its importance when I can. 1. Define copyright in my own words and tell my turn and talk partner. Number 2. Explain the purpose of copyright to another student. 3. Describe at least 4 characteristics of copyright to another student. Learning intention. 1B. I'll be able to explain the possible positive and negative effects of copyright law. Success criteria. Number 1. Describe an example on the use of copyright from the presentation and explain the causes and effects of the copyright on the event's stakeholders to another student. Number 2. With a partner, evaluate one example on the use of copyright law found in the presentation by investigating the event and determining whether copyright law was applied accurately. Number 3, orally report on the example of copyright to the instructor and explain our reasoning logically. Learning intention. 1C. I'll be able to understand the application of fair use doctrine to creative works. Success criteria. Number 1, I will be able to define fair use in my own words. Number 2, I will explain the purpose of fair use and tell my turn and talk partner. Number 3, I will be able to explain the 4 characteristics of fair use. Number 4, I will be able to use the 4 characteristics of fair use to determine the transformative nature of a work. Learning intention, 1D. I will be able to apply fair use guidelines accurately in the creation of my own transformative work. Success criteria, number 1, I will create a transformation work using my chosen web-based application. Number 2, I will analyze my work through a written reflection, evaluating my work through the 4 fair use guidelines and explain whether it upholds copyright law and why. Number 3, I will publish my work and evaluate a reflection on the Schoology discussion board. Selecting strategies, S. The resources selected for this lesson include a box light projector to project the copyright lecture to the students in the library. A sound system is needed to play the videos on Taylor Swift and Crash Course Copyright to engage the students in the use of relevant examples and different voices. Students are unlikely to receive, digest, and internalize information unless they are introduced to it in 3 different modalities. These modalities include visual, auditory, and verbal methods. Hence, the not shown but included turn and talk after slide 3, slide 4, slide 6, and slide 8, and slide 9. Visuals are utilized throughout the slide deck to contextualize the verbalized information and assist in formalized memory creation. Students will also use provided Chromebooks to complete success criteria 2 and 3 for learning intention 1B. Chromebooks will be used as Ms. Townsend guides students through the process of using applications such as Photoshop, curated by Education World as appropriate for the student's age and proficiency level, to create their own fair use mashups and parodies as depicted in Learning Intention 1D Success Criteria number 1. This lesson is structured into 4 sections. The first segment's Learning Intention 1A is led by the librarian who will help students understand what copyright law is and its purpose. The second segment's Learning Intention 1B is led by both Mrs. Stewart and the librarian in the library, as it also applies the skills of oral response, cause and effect, and evaluation. The third segment's Learning Intention 1C is led by both the librarian and Mrs. Stewart as the students work on the skills of paraphrasing, summarizing, and identifying examples of fair use. The technology instructor, Mrs. Townsend, and Mrs. Stewart lead the 4th segment of the lesson in the library's conference room. The 4th segment is based on the Learning Intention 1D and promotes appropriate technology use, problem solving, divergent thinking, innovation, and evaluative skills. Each of the 4 segments has a specific learning intention. The assessment piece is not only formative but also self-evaluative for the student as they work through the gathering, evaluation, and creation process of the cycle of inquiry. Formal rubrics outlining exact points available for each component and descriptors are provided to each student both digitally and as hard copies for each of the 4 segments' learning intentions and success criteria. The collaboration of Mrs. Stewart, Mrs. Townsend, and the librarian utilize resources including textual analysis skills, digital literacy, and technological applications. As a collective, the team will be using the library space and conference room to present and engage the students as lifelong learning professionals. This collaboration is part of a cross-curricular unit that supports the connection between students' chosen career and technology field, required academics, and enrichment sources to break down silos between educational departments. The collaboration will utilize a projector, collaborative flexible seating, student Chromebooks, and presentation laptops, and interactive boards for presenting and collaborating over a 2-week project meeting twice a week. Requiring student participation. Student groups will use the Schoology portfolio as a collaborative online platform. They will maintain organized sections for each of the 4 learning intention segments, 1A through 1D, with their corresponding success criteria. After each segment, students will complete a Flipgrid video reflection on their assessment of their learning based on the stated success criteria. Evaluate and revise. At the end of each lesson segment, students will answer an anonymous Google survey through Schoology evaluating the effectiveness of the instructor's delivery using the following 3 standards. Number 1, clarity of the learning intention. 2, flexibility to respond and correct student misunderstandings. And 3, willingness to respond to student needs. Thank you so much. And this is my Lesson Assure model for copyright in the digital world. Thank you. Have a great day.